Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Northeast Scene Podcast. This is Keith.
And Tommy.
How's everybody doing? Today, we have a very special guest, master percussionist, and a member of the genre-defining band Poisonthewell, Mr. Chris Hornbrook.
Ew.
Chris, how are you doing? How's it going?
I'm good. All things considered, all the weird shit going on in the world right now, and just trying to find ways to occupy yourself when you can't go out and have a life where you pretty much can't work. So
that's really funny. I was going to ask about that. I was going to say, I see that, like, I know a lot of, like, what you do is you work as a session musician, and I'm like, wait, can you still, because, like, you're kind of isolated when you're in the studio, like, recording drums. I figured maybe there's a possibility you still might be able to kind of swing doing some of that work.
It's not impossible. I got hit up probably about 4 or 5 days ago to potentially do a session, next month or so. But it just depends, the engineer and producer or both that want to work, if they're, ultra crazy about, COVID-19, or if they're like, hey, let's throw caution to the wind and, jump in and just do it.
Cool.
So, yeah, but obviously touring is at a standstill. Things are getting moved. It's looking like nothing's really going to start picking up until 2021, which is kind of crazy.
Yeah. Really?
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah. Just because, there's obviously no vaccination for COVID-19. And as they, especially like in California, as they loosen guidelines, they're going to do it very, very slowly as the sort of statistics of people getting it. You reach, you reach the point where less people are getting it, people are getting over it. It's sort of
like the flatten the curve part.
That's the term I was trying to think of. They're doing it very, very slowly. So that's what the projections is, that a lot of stuff is just going to get moved, not canceled. Festivals and dates, and it's just everything is going to get shifted up a year, or it's going to get rebooked. But it's kind of crazy to think about that. Every single band is probably going to try to occupy space and want to get back on touring. So I don't know if it's going to be an oversaturation or, competition in terms of bands being able to get holds on venues. And, that could be good, because if people want to go out and want to see shows, then great. But also, too, we're looking at things being really, really economically shitty because of the shutdown of everything. So all these tours are going to be out. But if people don't have money, then who knows? But obviously, they're passing all these stimuluses. They're expanding unemployment to everybody. So people might have money, but I don't know. I mean, we're just going to have to kind of watch this play out.
Yeah, because does come down to, like, it's discretionary spending. Like, it's just stuff that people don't necessarily have to spend money on, and it's kind of a luxury. So if people are really hurting, the thing that kind of, like, I saw an article, I think it was either yesterday or the day before that, and it was like one of these, like, super important, like, financial analysts, and he was saying, like, we're pretty sure that even, like, major places, like things like, for, like, California, like Disneyland, he's foreseeing not opening until at the very earliest 2021.
Yeah, that seems to be across the board for any sorts of entertainment. Like sports, music, theme parks. I mean,
it's a big liability, and I'm sure people don't want, like a potential, I got coronavirus here, so I'm suing the venue to cover my costs type of deal.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I was going to say, in terms of liability, like, I think that's one of the big things that, so I'm a teacher in New Jersey, and they keep saying, like, New Jersey's one of those states that around here that hasn't canceled school for the rest of the year. Pennsylvania has, New Jersey has, Virginia has, Maryland has, like, everybody pretty much surrounding us has basically said, like, no more school for the rest of the year, and potentially starting very late or starting with online sessions in September.
Yeah.
But New Jersey still says, hey, we might go back May 15th. And I had so many parents, I had parent-teacher conferences the other day. I had so many parents that were like, you're not even letting, like, really serious, like, almost, like, the next step from essential businesses be open, but you're going to send our kids back to a classroom where there's 30 kids and a teacher and a teacher's aide and
Yeah.
lunch workers and all this stuff. Like they were like livid. And I'm like, well, here's the thing. I don't think they're going to send us back, but that's at this point, it seems like everything's kind of in each governor's hand to kind of decide what the hell happens.
Yeah, man, this is unprecedented, right? We've never experienced this before with, modern technology, where things are at in 2020. The last one was the Spanish flu, and was it like 100 years ago?
1918.
Yeah, 1918. So 102 years ago, like things are obviously dramatically different from then to now. So it's going to be a massive learning curve of how to sort of deal with this. I mean, the government is basically saying, hey, nobody can work. They're clearly attempting in some capacity to compensate people. Like I said, opening up benefits for unemployment. Trump's adding like an extra $600 to unemployment. There's the $1,200 stimulus. There's probably going to be another round. There's the, all the sort of stuff that's going out for businesses. But, what's that going to do for inflation? Because they're just dumping trillions of dollars into the economy. I don't know how that works in a situation like this. I'm not an economist, It can't be good regardless.
Yeah. No, I'm very curious to see how this all plays out. It's like you said, it's unprecedented. I mean, all the problems in life day to day and like all the stuff you worry about. Did you imagine like one day to the next to just be like, well, you can't go outside anymore and you can't work. And you might die if you come into contact with the wrong person. It's insane.
What's really funny is my daughter said the other day, she was like, oh, it's like, she got up in the morning and I was like, what do you want for breakfast kind of stuff? And she's like, what are we going to do today? I'm like, well, we have schoolwork to get done. And then we're getting a delivery from the grocery store. So we'll spend some time putting that stuff away and then we can make dinner and blah, blah, blah. And she literally goes, Daddy, the world's like a movie right now because you kind of like go in and like, you don't know how it's going to end. Like every time you're like kind of like guessing like what's going to happen next. And you're like, yeah. Do you want some cereal? Because this is way too heavy for a 6-year-old at 7:30 in the morning. Like this is not the conversation I expected to have before I had coffee.
Wow.
At all.
Incredible. So Chris, tell us about how you first got into hardcore and some of the initial bands who made an impression on you.
So my moving from say listening to like punk, the skate punk of like the mid 90s to late 90s, moving into hardcore. Obviously, it was a very niche thing in Florida, and not a lot of people in those particular scenes there. So there was definitely crossover, but they were their own little sort of tribes. And I mean, I just started hanging around with people that were a little bit more into sort of the hardcore thing, and it basically I was playing in a punk band with Ryan Premack, the guy that plays guitar in Poisonthewell. He was playing bass in the band, and he was always into like progressive rock and punk rock and hardcore and all this sort of stuff. And him and another buddy of his, the original singer from Poisonthewell, this guy named Ari Lair, just wanted to start a melodic hardcore band. And my getting into it was literally being introduced when I first joined the early incarnation of Poisonthewell. And then from there, you start meeting people and, developing friendships and playing shows together and touring and all that sort of stuff. So it was just literally like a kind of a natural transition from punk to hardcore. Like I said, especially because in South Florida, there were definitely boundaries, but people knew people from those little circles, from those cliques,
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, South Florida became a really big epicenter for hardcore. So many bands, Shy Halud, Strong Arm, Morning Again, you guys, Evergreen Terrace, the list goes on and on. Did it grow a lot? Like, was it existing and it just exploded kind of after you guys became more established, or was it always there? Like, how was it?
It was always there. Like you said, bands like Shy Halud, Morning Again, Bird of the Omen, Brethren. I'm trying to think of any other bands, hardcore bands that were there before Poisonthewell. But those are like, Strong Arm. Those were like the main, in my eyes, those were like the main foundation bands of the South Florida hardcore scene. And I feel like we were the next generation. Like they were like, the the boomers, and we were like
I
we were Gen
absolutely.
X, we were the next band to kind of come along and take it a little further, because
Yeah.
that's what it seems like. It seems like every generation that comes, hardcore wise, takes it a little further than where it was before.
Exactly.
You know, it was really funny. When I was growing up, there was a record store near our house that I had gone in and randomly gotten this comp, and it was called 403 Chaos, and it was just all like Florida bands.
Mhm.
And I remember like listening to it, going like, "Oh, okay." Like there was so many things on there, like Reversal of Man, Cavity, Hot Water Music, Drag Body, Birdeville Omen, I think was on it, and but I was like,
Mhm.
when I heard like on the hardcore shows, like people are like, "Oh yeah, there's these new bands coming from from Florida," and I was like,
Yeah.
"Oh okay," and I'm like, my association with like Florida hardcore was like this very, like besides like Drag Body and that kind of stuff was like this almost crusty kind of borderline grindy like Reversal of Man and
Mhm.
like that kind of stuff. It was like chaos where I was like, oh okay, and
Yeah.
then I heard Poison the Well and I was like, wow, these guys are so tight. These are this is you guys, the word I thought of was like torchbearer. Like you guys are the ones bringing the stuff that I had heard 3 or 4 years prior into that modern style. It was really really cool to hear.
Yeah, thanks, man.
Yeah.
Florida is such a big state. It doesn't seem very big, but it's definitely separated. Like South Florida was South Florida. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then there was like Central Florida, and then there was the Gainesville scene, like Hot Water Music, and it was kind of those three. I know some of the metal stuff was coming out of like Tampa, like Central Florida,
Mhm.
Tampa area, but that wasn't really directly connected. It was indirectly connected.
Yeah.
So it's like, you know, some of the bands kind of came across one another, but not really. Like, I don't know anybody from Hot Water Music. Like, I've seen them a few
That's
times.
crazy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but you also got to
That's
think Gainesville to South Florida is, I think, roughly 5 hours. It's the equivalent of driving.
oh
It's like,
yeah.
it's like driving from like Los Angeles to like San Francisco, roughly, give or take.
Like East Coast people, that would be like that's like Philly to Pittsburgh. Because you were in a Philly band, you should automatically know people in Pittsburgh bands. Like it doesn't fucking
Yeah.
work. That doesn't work like that. A 5-hour difference is fucking huge.
It's
Very
funny how that works.
detached.
Like certain bands just don't cross each other's hemisphere. Like a while ago, I remember seeing something on social media, either from Poison the Well or Hopes Fall. But even though Poison the Well and Hopes Fall were, big at the same time and on the same label, someone said like, "Oh yeah, we never really crossed each other's orbit. You just never know how it's going to
Wild.
play out."
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that was probably, it may have been them or us. We definitely never really crossed their orbit because I feel like they were like a little bit younger, and we just never
Yeah.
toured together, and there was just never like crossing of the paths.
Right. And it's like you said, it's a generational thing because when I got into hardcore, the godfathers of, melodic Florida hardcore were Strong Arm and Shai Hulud, and those two of their records were two of the earliest records I
Yep.
got into. And this melodic hardcore charge was being led by Mike Shaw, who he was our friend who sang for This Day Forward.
Yeah, I know
And
Mike.
we would get in his car and he'd always be like, "Hey, I got this band." And that first Poison the Well record was one of those bands. And we actually saw you early on. You played up at the Stalag 13 in West Philly with 12 Tribes. I know you guys played a lot of shows with them.
Yeah, dude, that was a long time. That was like 1998, I think.
Yes.
98, 99, maybe even as far as back as 97. Yeah,
98, I think.
yeah, I remember. I don't remember if he played there once or twice. I know one time we played. We were playing. It was us 12 Tribes. Somebody else, I believe.
The
Caven.
one I was at was Harvest, Dillinger, Cave In. That was an epic show.
That's
that was like
Jesus.
one of, yeah.
Ridiculous lineup.
So we opened, and it was 12 Tribes, and it was Harvest, and Caven played, but Caven only played 4 songs for whatever reason.
Right.
And they played
Technical difficulties.
something. Yeah, there was some sort of shit,
Yeah.
and they played, I think, the first 3 songs off of Until Your Heart Stops, and then old school lineup of Dillinger, Escape Plan, like Dimitri singing and Chris playing drums. They played. I remember it being fucking cold as shit. I remember that place just being, it was just a squatter, fucking crusty
Yeah.
house.
Yeah, dude. That place
It was a gutted townhouse, basically, and I remember Dillinger covered Raining Blood, and it was wild.
Yep.
It was a wild show. That place was like the Wild West. Well, it was the Wild West. It's
Dude,
West Philly.
That is West Philly. And there was
Yeah.
my favorite thing in the world about that venue was like you would be outside and legitimately hear stuff and go, I'm pretty sure those were gunshots.
Yep.
And then you look what your options. You're like, all right, well, I could walk back inside the venue where there's literally holes punched through the drywall and I can see the next building. Or I could just stay out here and kind of risk it. And I'm like, fuck it, I'll just stay out here. Like,
funny story about that. So that was the second time that we played Stalag 13. The first time we played, it was us.
Yeah.
It may have been 12 Tribes, but it was also this band called Skit System, which was like a side project of a few of the dudes of At the Gates. So anyways, we play.
Wow.
12 Tribes plays, and at some point, I think outside, I wasn't there, so this is, secondhand information, but somebody got robbed. And at that point, both bands were like, yo, we need to get the fuck out of here.
Yeah, pretty sketch. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's pretty much that's par for the course though with like that area because it's like
At the time, yeah.
Yeah. Especially holy shit at the time. Right now, you drive down there. It's I think it's a pharmacy now.
Oh wow.
Or it's something really. Because keep in mind, like a block and a half up. If you keep going up past 40th, is where University of Pennsylvania and Drexel universities have their fraternity housing.
Mm-hmm.
So like it's like a bunch of Ivy League kids like right down the street. Like
Wow.
and not only Ivy League kids, fraternity Ivy League kids. So it's
Yeah.
like very like it's like kind of a you would also get that mix of like strange groups of like meathead kids wandering down the street like randomly while you're playing a show.
That shit's fucking wild.
That's like the classic Philly venue, Stalag 13. That and the Kill Time were legendary.
And they were next door to each other. They were literally they were
Yeah.
separated by a foot and a half.
Don't remember if we ever played Kill Time. It sounds really familiar.
Oh, you have, yeah,
Right.
because you played
I've
the
seen
This Day Forward record release. Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
So yeah.
That era of my life is a little blurry. I do remember certain venues like CB's. I remember Stalag 13. I remember playing like this venue in Springfield, Massachusetts. I can't remember what the name of it is, but I remember playing it a few times at 12 Tribes. There's like key moments in my life during that period of time where I remember certain spots. And but for some reason, the Kill Time is I just can't remember it to save my life.
Yeah, I mean, that was so long ago. There's like very specific stuff I remember, and then large periods of time I don't remember. It just depends. So did you guys do a lot of touring on Distance Makes the Heart Grow Fonder? Like, did you do any like US tours, or was it just wherever we have a show, we're driving there and we're doing it?
Well, that period of time was a little bit more difficult, right? Because obviously the internet isn't what it is right now. And I remember shows having to be booked through like AOL Instant Messenger of just like, hey, we got this guy that could set up shows in New York, or we got a guy that could set up shows in Philly, or the guy that could set up shows outside of Boston or Virginia Beach or whatever. So what we would do is we would take like vacation time, like myself and Derek Miller, who he didn't play on Distance. He's credited, but he joined probably at first or second little run that we did with that, original lineup, poisonthewell lineup with like Russ playing guitar, Andrew playing bass, Dwayne on vocals, Ari on vocals, myself and Ryan. We were both in high school, so we could only do like winter vacation, summer vacations, spring vacation, whatever. But during Distance, we would just okay, we can go play some shows, and we would just go up there and we'd wing it, and we'd fucking have 3 booked but play 7 because we jumped on a few, because that's just kind of the way it was back then. So there was a little bit of touring, and as a side note, that was where we met 12 Tribes. It was the very first tour that we ever did. We somehow linked up with them, and it's crazy. Still talk to some of those dudes to this day, but very little touring because it was just hardcore was extremely small, and booking shows wasn't exactly the easiest.
Right. Yeah. There was no internet really. It was instant messenger and email.
Yep.
Those were the main things. Definitely no social media.
Yeah.
I always remember 12 Tribes because My friend Pat McCormick, who used to book shows, he they were staying at his house, but I think his parents didn't want anyone in the house, so they were just kind of sitting in the van in front of his house.
That's pretty funny.
And my parents were more chill, so I was like, dude, just everyone come over here. And my mom was like making them breakfast and everything. It was funny.
That's really fucking hilarious because around that same time we would stay with the Shaws.
Yeah.
That was because they were super fucking cool and their parents were super cool, and this is before you'd even attempt to be making any money off of music. So when
Yeah.
we'd rent our van to go up there and play those shows, it was out of pocket. Not a lot, but each guy would have to throw in like $200. But for like a high school kid,
Right.
$200 is a lot of fucking money. But we would stay with people, and the Shaws were one people. That's how I met the Shaw brothers, met Vadim, met Colin, met all those dudes. We met through This Day Forward and playing shows with them in the area, and just fucking staying with them, and just it was a pretty crazy experience to think about now.
The Shaw House was unlike anything I have ever experienced. It was just the mecca for like Bucks County hardcore. Everyone was just always there.
Yeah.
I would just drive there and just walk in like it was my house, which is unheard of.
Yeah.
Like that's wild. And I that's actually when I met you guys, because I was always around.
Mhm.
So I was just in the house, and you guys were there a lot, and it was just a good time.
Yeah, man, it was really exciting. It's just a really exciting time in my life and in the band's, pre blowing up within that world. I someone tagged me yesterday in Poison the Well Instagram in a flyer from like 2001 when we played CBGBs, and it was probably like a week before 9/11 happened. And I vividly remember certain things from that day, like coming in, we played some shows from like whatever, Connecticut, Boston, whatever, that area, coming down. And I remember we hit a pothole, our fucking trailer popped off and it was dragging by the chains. I remember, yeah, dude, I mean, totally fine. Nobody got hurt. There was no problems. I was like in the back of the van, laying down, sleeping. But then, I remember going into the town, and this may not have been this time, but I vividly remember getting food and then seeing the Twin Towers and then being like, oh, I'm just going to walk to them. And, from where CB's was to fucking where the Towers was really fucking far.
Yeah.
And I started walking and I was like, this is far and we got to play and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, I'll just do this some other time. And then, a week later, 9/11 happens. But yeah, that's just, it's weird because it's like little things like that, or staying at the Shaw's house. And like, I don't remember like fully everything, but I remember bits and pieces that would pop out,
Yeah. It's strange. Like I walk by where CB's was now in the Bowery, and it's like John Varvatos' store now.
Yeah.
And, and when you walk by the financial district, and they still have the imprints of where the buildings were and the memorials. And I never actually got to see a show at CB's before it went away, which is a regret of mine. And I don't think I went to New York before the Towers went down. So, it's good to have those memories.
Oh, dude. Yeah, absolutely. Like without question, like Poison the Well played there probably 2, 3, 4 times. I could remember 3 off the top of my head, but I feel like there was more.
Yeah.
Dude, it's just cool. It's just cool to have been a part of that. Played with cool bands there. Just, it's like a legendary venue. It's like, being able to say, I played CBGBs or I played 930 or like, fucking trying to
ABC No Rio or
just anything fucking cool, or like on a bigger scale. If you get, if you're playing huge rooms, you get to play like the Forum, or you get to play like, Madison Square Garden. Like, obviously different in capacity and quality, but in terms of like the meeting with music and the type of people that have played those rooms, it's just, it's like, for me, it's always like bucket list stuff.
Have you ever played the Garden?
Haven't. I was supposed to be on a tour that played the Garden, but the artist that I was working for, he didn't end up getting that leg of the tour. We eventually got another leg of that tour like a year and a half later, but the first leg was like supposed to be MSG, the Forum in LA. Like there's a few like really cool key places, but we ended up getting the second run of that tour. We were still doing arenas, but it wasn't like that legendary sort of place.
Right, because the garden, I would be like, oh man, I gotta hear about that. It's the garden. That's
That's
awesome.
what I'm
I
saying.
walk by there all the time.
Yeah, dude. Like, yeah, just being able to play the garden, or even on the West Coast, like the Staples Center. That, like the
Yeah,
Staples
Oh
Center, the
yeah.
Forum, like,
yeah.
all the crazy cool shit that's happened there. It's like you just kind of want to, just it's just cool to have done that. It's like recording at a studio that a lot of amazing bands have made, influential records at. You're just, it's just cool. I'm participating in that to a certain degree.
I love that. Yeah. Like when my friend Brendan, who plays guitar for Circus Survive,
Hmm.
their first record they recorded with Brian McTurnan, and I was like, listen, when you go, ask him questions about Texas is the Reason,
Yeah,
and find out if he's sitting on any songs we haven't heard. I need it. I need to hear about it.
yeah,
Like, I love that kind of shit.
yeah, man. There's definitely like, especially like hardcore and that whole sort of world. There's definitely like very legendary producers that have done, you know, groundbreaking records within the community, within the world. And
Yeah.
Ed McTurnan is definitely one of them.
Oh yeah. So how did the current incantation of Poison the Well form moving into Opposite of December? We lost the two original singers and Jeff came into the picture, and I think Alan was playing bass at that time.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So Andrew, our original bass player, left to go to college. So
Mm-hmm.
Derek was friends with Alan. So that's how we met Alan. Alan was like piercing up in Hope Sound. He was just a
Mm-hmm.
piercer at a tattoo spot, and he was friends with Derek. And he didn't really have, crazy bass skills, but whatever. At the time,
Yeah.
it didn't really matter because we were just young kids, and he could get by and totally fine. With
Yeah.
Ari and Dwayne, the two original singers, we eventually kicked out Dwayne. I don't really remember the
Mm-hmm.
reasons. I think that there was something. There was some sort of something,
Yeah.
and Dwayne was replaced by Jeff because Ari, the original singer, had gone to like local Miami shows, and Jeff's original band called Defy played, and he
Mm-hmm.
was like, "Oh, that guy's voice is just fucking incredible." So we brought Jeff on. I think we did one run, one little tour, little mini tour, of course, with 12 Tribes. And
Mm-hmm.
I remember coming home from that tour and just kind of being like, nobody was stoked on Ari. There was very much a sort of dictator vibe going on. Now,
Uh,
that's years ago. We're all cool and there's no problems, but we just
yeah.
we
Yeah.
kicked him out because he was just trying to have too much control and just dictating shit.
Right.
That's kind of how that came to the point where, like, yeah, we're just going to have one singer, and that was essentially the sort of the core lineup from that point on until about 2004. Myself, Jeff, Ryan, and Derek.
Right, right. And tell us about some of the writing of Opposite of December, because it's a highly influential record. And, I'm sure people tell you that all the time. And I've talked to plenty of people who that record has had an impact on. Tell us about some of
Absolutely.
your influences at the time and just some of the experiences going into writing that.
Well, it's interesting because I would definitely have to say contemporary hardcore of that period of time was a massive influence, and I think that the record sort of communicates that. Derek was heavily into like Converge, and Cave In, Acme,
Hmm.
Coalesce, Botch. Like he was really into that. I was really into
Yeah.
bands like newer Zao, um, local bands like Shiloh, Morning Again, so on and so forth. Like Turmoil too, Turmoil the Process
Oh,
Oh
yeah.
was a
yeah.
Legendary.
super kick,
Yeah.
Yeah.
super kick ass record. So that's kind of what our main, like me and Derek's main influences were. Ryan, the sound that sort of the sound, the guitar sound of Poison the Well, definitely comes from Ryan, and he's
Yeah.
influenced from a whole bunch of other things, like his favorite bands like Rush, and he's
Hmm.
very much influenced by like a lot of progressive rock, a lot of jazz fusion, a lot of like just old school punk stuff. Like his shit kind of runs the sort of spectrum of music. And then, Jeffrey at the time, I believe, was just into just straight hardcore. Like I know he was a huge fan of like old Zao.
Hmm.
Um, and just, I'm trying to think of like what his CD book was at the time. But anyway, so that's kind of what it was. So it was like three dudes that were really into hardcore, and then another dude that was into hardcore, but then also brought some different elements into the band that wasn't really, prominent in metalcore, hardcore, whatever you want to fucking call it at the time.
Yeah.
I think that's what really kind of gave the band its sound. Writing was sparse. We would write at my parents' old house. We wrote a little bit at Derek's parents' old house because, at the time we're like 17, 18, 19 years old. We wrote a little bit at like the local rehearsal spot that was in, like, I think it was like Pompano or Pompano Beach, and yeah, we just kind of pieced it together. Some of because it's funny because Ryan was also playing in that band called We're Fear and Weapons Meet, and it was a South Florida kind of old school hardcore band. He quit for a little bit because he saw a little bit more with that than Poison the Well. So half the material on Opposite was basically written with myself, Ryan, and a bit of Derek, obviously. And then the other half, songs like Nerdy or To Mandate Heaven or Wish for Wings at Work, those songs were basically written with Derek and myself. Ryan may have had, like, throwing some riffs around, and Derek, may have kind of held on to him because we always kind of knew in the back of our mind Ryan was going to come back. But it was really separated, like, in terms of the writing. Because I don't know if you know this, but the way Opposite was recorded was Ryan played the songs, all the guitar on the songs that he recorded on, and Derek played all the songs. I'm sorry, he wrote, and then Derek played all the guitar on the songs that he wrote.
I had no idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say no idea that was the way that was done. That's awesome.
Yeah. And then obviously, Jeff sang on everything. I played drums on everything, and then and then fucking Alan played bass on everything. But yeah, that's just kind of how that was done. It just made sense because Ryan wasn't in the band at the time, so he didn't know how to play Nerdy or to play Mandate or like Midair Love Message was like another one that was put together by me and Derek, and so it just made sense. He just came in and he just played the parts to his songs, and then he just kind of took off.
Yeah, it makes sense. You go in, you do it, and then you can all figure it out later once it's ready. Once it's time to tour and play out.
Well, yeah. Well, also too funny when we were touring. I don't remember if this is pre or post recording of Opposite, but we at one point I think we toured as like a 4-piece. It was like me, Derek, Alan, and Jeff. Once again with 12 Tribes. So it may have been a little bit before or a little bit after Opposite was released. I think before. Ryan had already quit the band, and I think he just kind of came in, but to track. But at some point we knew he was going to come back because it didn't really seem sustainable for him to be in We're Fear and Weapons Meet.
It's funny to hear all the influences you listed are like all my still to this day, my favorite hardcore bands. And back then, everything. So it's just interesting to hear that you guys had the same influences, and just to hear the different things that different bands do with those same influences.
Well, I always kind of look at it like that record is like sort of how do I say this? It was just kind of like an aggregate of all the stuff kind of going on in hardcore at the moment that we kind of put together. Like, I personally don't think that Opposite December is necessarily groundbreaking in terms of what we were doing, because you could just listen to Converge, you could listen to Cave In, you can listen to Harvest, or you can listen to Zayo, and you can kind of find those influences a little bit more. You could hear it. Whereas I just kind of look at it like, it was right band, right sound, right look, right time, right place. It was just like, perfect storm where everything aligned, like we would never in any way claim that, we're the fathers of like metalcore or that, that launching of melodic hardcore. Like, it's been said and it's very flattering, but, at the end of the day, like, me, Ryan, and Jeff sit around and talk, or, if Derek's around, we'll talk, like, we're kind of all on the same page where we're just kind of like, we were just kind of ripping off bands that we really liked. It just hit a nerve with a certain generation at a certain time when that particular style was starting to bubble to the surface.
Right. And no, I'm with you there. And that's what you do when you're young. You copy the bands that you like, and what comes out, what comes out.
Yeah, exactly.
And then you'd like develop your own voice and your own style.
Totally. I mean, if listening from Opposite to Tropic Rock, it still sounds like us playing the instruments. It still sounds like, how Ryan puts chords together. We've kind of, we made our own sound, whether you like it or you don't, or whatever. We eventually grew up and grew into our shoes and understood what we wanted to do and what direction we wanted to go. And
Hmm.
in some ways, it's really great because I think that in a lot of ways we have humbly speaking, we have a pretty solid catalog, and we're very proud of every record, whether some people like it or some people don't. Like, we recognize it.
Absolutely.
It was a reflection of us as the collective at that point. And
Yeah.
you know, I'm quite proud. I'm proud of Opposite all the way to the Tropic Rot, and I think we've built a nice, respectable little legacy for ourselves within hardcore, within that world, and we're very, very grateful for it. We are very appreciative. We also realize it's like a kind of a once in a lifetime opportunity to have been a part of that, and we're just, I could speak for the entire band where I say, we're all very like humbled and proud of being involved.
Absolutely. That's awesome. As well you should be. Yeah. I mean, the whole catalog, just each record brings its own unique thing.
It's a
And
story.
we're going to get in oh yeah,
It's a
and
story.
we're going to get into some more of that, but my friend Brendan, who I mentioned earlier,
Yeah.
I remember him posting a thing randomly on social media and saying he heard the Opposite of December before it came out, and he said to you guys like, "Hey, this is going to be huge." And the record had a very, very strong reception
Mhm.
with fans. And did you guys have any sense of that coming up to the release? Like, wow, we really have something special here, or was it just we did this and we're putting it out and we're going to see what happens?
Well, I mean, in the studio, we were all very excited because of what was coming
Hmm.
together, and obviously, we are like, "This is super cool." But really, really past, playing shows where we had people show up, because prior to Opposite of December, like, nobody really gave a shit about Poison the Well. Like, there was not a huge attendance. There wasn't. It wasn't. It was like, yeah, like, we knew the right people and we were able to get hooked up. Like, we knew John Wiley with Morning Again. He hooked us up with
Hmm.
Good Life, and that obviously helped. But nobody really cared. It wasn't scratching the itch that people wanted in terms of that type of music. But
Hmm.
we did Opposite. We're like, this is cool. Like, this, I think that we'd be able to accomplish, to be able to draw 200 kids in if we're lucky, in Fort Lauderdale, and have them sing along and dance and do all the things that people do at hardcore shows.
Yeah.
To say that we understood that 20 some odd years later we'd be talking about the impact that that record has, nobody really knew. I think Derek,
Yeah.
Derek hasn't been in Poison Wall for a very long time, but we're all still friends.
Right.
We're all on good terms and we talk. But looking back now, I think that he was able to sort of see there's something here. He was like the guy, like, at the time he was more like the direction guy. He could say,
Hmm.
I see what this is. I see where we can go with this. I see it bubbling up. And he kind of took the driver's seat. Not in terms of writing, because, it was definitely a very collective effort. We all had our say,
Hmm.
but in terms of like the direction with the band and the idea, like, oh, we could actually really fucking do this. Like, we could do more with this than just our little small editions of 200 kids and at Club Q in Florida. Like, no, we could do more. We
Yeah.
could do tours. We could play with bigger bands, and then we just, as it came, we sort of seized it, and we just moved forward with it as much as we could. Took every opportunity that we had, and sunk everything into it. Everybody was on the same page.
Yeah. Yeah, and it was, I could tell it was going to be something special. I remember Trustkill posting up a sample song and just being like, "Whoa,
Yeah.
what happened here?" Okay, and that record was like the soundtrack for that time. I
Yeah.
randomly remembered we would when we were younger. Now this is a terribly juvenile thing to do, but
Mhm.
we used to drive around the neighborhood and like egg people's cars, and there was this random apartment where we saw a guy watching TV, and we would just always egg his apartment
Yeah.
just randomly and like dumb stuff like that. And we would put on Opposite of December and then like go on our route and terrorize the neighborhood. That was like our tradition.
That's the quintessential shit that like teenagers do.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh my God.
Yeah.
100%. Like, there's so many times where we go to, like, I actually mentioned this before with Keith when we were talking about something. I was like, we might want to check the statute of limitations on some of this shit, because like, we're mentioning it, and I'm like, all right, no, that's petty vandalism. We're okay with that. And then I'm like, let's
Yeah.
bring this. No, don't bring that up. Don't bring that up.
Really funny.
So how quickly did you start to see a change in your shows after it came out?
I mean, it wasn't like from one day we were playing to 50 kids to then playing it to 1,000 kids. We definitely had to
Yeah.
put the hard work in. We
Yeah.
definitely had to get in the van and, forfeit certain things, forfeit healthy relationships at home, forfeit going to college, um, forfeit a lot of
Mhm.
things to do it. There was definitely work involved, but we definitely had gotten lucky with writing and releasing Opposite, especially coming out on Trustkill. I don't know I think that if it would have came
Yeah.
out on Good Life, it may not have had the same impact because originally it was slated to come out
Mhm.
on Good Life Records, but I forget what it
Yeah.
was. But we kind of figured we had something, and Trustkill showed interest, and we thought that was the best move at that point for us. Um,
Absolutely. And Trustkill was another perfect storm. They just had a run of incredible bands at that time.
yeah, I mean, it's just the way it worked with Josh and the bands that he had. It worked even prior to this to us. He had Harvest,
Yeah.
Brothers.
18 Visions were
Yep.
around for
But
right around that
yeah,
time, and
they were
yeah.
definitely before. 18V was definitely before us. I think Until the Ink Runs Out came out a little bit before, or a little bit after Opposite.
Yep.
Waltz Jericho, he signed us
Yep.
and them around the same time. So there was definitely probably a lead up with him to the release of Opposite, and then he kept going after that. He signed Bleeding Through. I think he signed Throwdown. 18 Visions kind of continued on for a little bit.
Yep.
I think obviously he had Hopes Fall 2.
Yep.
Um, you know, he knew how to pick the bands, and that particular type of music was exploding at the time.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I guess you guys were on the road all the time after Opposite of December came out, right? Because I saw you in Pennsylvania all the time. I
Mhm.
mean, Hellfest, you were just probably constantly on tour.
We did everything we could because the funny thing is, Opposite came out in 1999. Yeah, it was 99. 99, and I was still in high school, as was Derek was still in high school. So
Really?
yeah, so the Ju-
It's funny you mentioned that because I always assumed everyone was like way older than me and just way more, well, definitely more mature, I'm sure. But
Mhm.
just I always assumed everyone was like a lot older than me. But I saw that we're the same age. I think I just looked really, really young because I remember being out on tour and bands thinking I was like 15, but
Mhm.
I was pretty close to the same age as everybody else.
Yeah, I mean, for Poison the Well, I was during that period of time. I was the second youngest.
Mm.
Derek was the youngest. Jeffrey is like a month older than me, and then Ryan is older than me by like 2 or 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, like I said, during that period of time, we would go out on tour. We would take weekends off. So me and Derek would forfeit school on Friday, leave on a Thursday, go up, drive up, play a show in Virginia Beach, go hit a show at CB's, maybe hit a show somewhere in Philly, or maybe go up, hit Worcester, hit
Mm-hmm.
the Middle East in fucking in Boston, and then drive home. Be like not play a bunch of shows, but like hit 2 to 3 shows,
Yeah.
and then be back home by Monday, and then we both would be back at school by Tuesday. We did this once a month, almost every month during my senior year of high school and Derek's
Mm-hmm.
senior year of high school. Yeah, and,
Wow.
and oddly enough, my parents are fucking cool with it. So,
That's really awesome.
bruh,
That is cool. I like that. My parents were cool with stuff like that too. Like I went out on a couple tours with This Day Forward,
mhm.
and I had shows in their house twice. And they some stuff they were really strict about, but that they were like, yeah, I guess they figured, if it's happening here, we can keep an eye on them.
Totally. And my parents are really fucking. They're super cool people. My dad,
Yeah.
played bass and toured around and did a bunch of stuff, so he kind of understood it. They definitely were not stoked on me choosing this life because they knew how difficult it was.
Yeah.
Being a musician and being successful. I was, fortunate enough to take it further than my dad did. And, I'm hoping if I have a son or daughter down the road, if that ever happens, and they could take it further than I can. It's like passing the torch, sort of.
That's a
Hmm.
Um,
really cool way to think about, because my mom was like, I'm so like, as soon as I said I was in a band, my mom was like, that's the dumbest shit I've ever heard. Like, she immediately was like dismissive of it. So like, I thought when I hear people tell them like their story of like, hey, my mom would help me with this, or my father was really into this, it's like, that's so cool to have people that were, now my mom was supportive of other things, but for her, punk rock, hardcore, all of that was like, she was like, this is a waste of time. Like, how are you,
Oh, dude,
like, cause
yeah, they don't get it. I mean, they still don't, they understand it a little bit, but they don't fully get it. Like at the
Mhm.
time when I was 18, 19, like they didn't understand it at all, but they were like, okay, well, let him get this out of his system. And, I see,
yeah,
I see
yeah,
it too. I see both sides of the coin with my parents. My mom is obviously mothers try to protect, and she saw how hard it was for my father and the pain that he had to go through, and she was shielding me. Whereas I think my dad was like a little skeptical. It's more of like, be a man, go out and prove yourself, right? He's like, well, if I couldn't do it, you
Mhm.
can't do it. So that obviously, a little bit of a fire under my ass. And
oh
you
yeah,
have to go and you have to be a man. You have to prove, like, there's men are very meritocratic. So it's like, go out there and rites of passage. And
yep,
at some point,
Yep.
my dad did accept it when I was like, oh, I'm going to Europe. And, we signed a deal with Atlantic. Like, I proved myself, and that's totally
Yes.
cool. At the time, I didn't get it, but the older that I became, the more I understood of like, okay, yeah, it would have been a little cool if he was a bit more supportive, but at the same time, him being like, well, prove yourself, it's just part of strengthening yourself as it's part of it's part of the role that the father should provide to the son. You know what I mean? The way
Yeah.
the way I look at it. And like I said, the older I've gotten and the more I've thought about it and the more experiences that I've had as a man, the more I understand it. Because it's like, yeah, like if he would have just been like, oh, this is great and this is blah blah blah, and more supportive, maybe I wouldn't have taken it as far. But
Right, because like spite can be like the ultimate motivator, especially for me.
to-
Because
totally.
my dad, he's supportive, but he does it in a weird way. Like he'll, I don't know, maybe it's in a protective way. He'll be like, "Oh, you can't do that," and then I'll be like, "Well, now I'm going to do it. Now I
Yeah.
have to prove myself."
Yeah. I think with my dad, he knew that the world was a very hard, cruel place, and that if I were to survive in it, if I were to be able to survive, especially choosing the road of music, he was gonna have to do everything from me being a young boy to becoming a man going on tour. He was gonna have to do everything within his power to make sure that he made me as strong as possible. And I'm very grateful for his role in my life and what he did. It took me a really, really, really long time to understand it because I'd never really understood it. And I do think
Right.
that with going on today in society with, men being raised by, say, like single moms and like not having a strong, positive male role model in their life to sort of guide them, I
Hmm.
feel like we're dealing with a pretty weak world. And I look at that and I look at what my father gave me, the grit and the strength to persist forward. And it's only once you could sort of compare it to society that you could say, "Oh fuck, man, I'm glad he did that." It took me growing up to understand that because I feel like we
It
do it.
it always does. Yeah,
I
because
mean,
I look back and I used to just look back pissed off all the time or why'd this happen to me, but now I'm like, oh, these experiences shaped who I am today. So for that,
totally,
I'm grateful.
totally,
Yeah.
yeah, and I'm very, very grateful for my father because maybe if he wouldn't have done the things that he did, maybe I would have bailed on this away a really long time ago. But I didn't
Right.
because it's just like the
Right.
strength and the grit to be able to persevere and get what you want.
Yeah. So opposite of December is out. We're touring. We're moving on up, and now Tear from the Red,
Yeah,
the second album,
yeah.
and this was a leap forward for the band. Some of my favorite songs are on it. The opening track is one of my favorites. It's classic in my mind,
Cool, man. Thank
and
you.
it's a little more melodic. Now I lost touch with a lot of hardcore because I was young and thick headed at the time, and a lot of bands were they were heavy and then they're like we're not heavy anymore,
Yeah.
and I didn't like that. Like I would get mad, but you guys didn't do that here. You didn't drastically change your sound. There's more melody, but there's a lot of heaviness too. It's just
Hmm.
kind of an advancement of the opposite LP in my
yeah.
mind. But
Yeah.
tell us about some of the experiences around that album that stick out in your mind.
I do remember writing it. I remember Derek also too seeing the opportunity because he was a very, very big Deftones fan, and I,
Yeah.
I still believe he is. But he's like he was kind of the guy that was seeing like, hey, like Deftones is a really big band. I think around that time they released White Pony, and that
Yes.
was a very, very big successful record. So
Yeah.
he was like thinking I think he was thinking in his mind, like, we can do what they're doing, but not really have to alter our sound really at all. Just maybe take it in a different direction, organic,
Hmm.
because he was a big Deftones fan. He started thinking of heavy music very differently. And him paired
Yeah.
up with Ryan, who is always left of center in a good way when it comes
Hmm.
to that sort of stuff, was a great combination to be able to move forward with the band's sound. And yeah, like it, it was definitely a little bit more pop influenced, a little bit less of the what we commonly refer to as riff salad arrangements. There was
Yeah.
definitely a little bit more. We were finding a little bit more fluidity to the structure and the structures of the songs, and
Yeah.
adopting more of like a pop structure, but like not really necessarily altering our sound at all. Just being influenced more by stuff not hardcore related, on top of still being influenced by stuff that was hardcore. So it was that
Right.
weird merger of both, but it was organic. There wasn't some sort of premeditated, we have to change our sound to fit this thing. It was just kind of like, oh well, what we're doing kind of works for it. Let's just keep doing what we're doing and get better and write better songs and become better musicians, and go out, get in the van, go on tour, and just persist forward.
Yeah, and it's definitely evident on that album for sure. And how was the reception to that album, and just the tours and everything? Because I lost touch with hardcore around that time. I just got really into post rock and like getting
Mhm.
fucked up all the time, so I wasn't really paying attention to a lot of things. So just how was it around that time?
It was interesting. I don't really feel like the record was well received at all. I
Hmm.
think that people were expecting, opposite part two, because that's just
Yeah.
what we did. And we, decided to sort of do what we did and say fuck everybody and move forward with that. And
Yeah.
I do remember when we turned it into to Trustkill, I think Josh was a little, I don't want to say let down, but I don't think
Hmm.
it was what he was expecting. And
Ah.
because of that, um, yeah, I mean, it definitely was not received well off the top of the, off the top. It wasn't. It was definitely very different than Opposite of December, and I think the way that we received that record really influenced how our attitude was moving forward with writing music and writing records. Was just kind of like fuck everybody, we're going to do what we want, and
Yeah, and ultimately, I think you have to do that, because if you just think like, oh, we have to do what we think people want us to do, or if you're listening to a producer say like, do this, and you don't go with your heart, you're just ultimately going to end up regretting it forever. So, if you're doing it your way, at least you can say we did it our way. It's genuine. This is it.
exactly, and that's kind of the
Yeah.
attitude we maintained with it. On top of the fact that we were finding success, like Care for the Red,
Yeah.
it opened more doors for us. It sold more records than Opposite. Yeah, it didn't really necessarily have the same sort of impact within hardcore.
Yeah.
But I mean, whatever. Like that was never really the intention of Opposite. So
Yeah.
it's just kind of like, okay, whatever, like let's just keep doing what we're doing. We have an opportunity to actually do this for a living. We saw
Yeah.
we saw a golden opportunity to be ourselves and become a big band without really having to compromise too much, because it seemed like every record that we put out became more and more popular. So
Hmm.
whatever we were doing as a band obviously was paying off.
So did you have to like work did the guys have to work another job during that time, or was there a point where you were just doing the band and that's all you had to do?
No, everybody was still working. I mean, it wasn't until we signed with Atlantic and got like some upfront money, and the
Hmm.
band became more of a touring entity, that like more of a touring entity where we were making more money, because obviously each record was a step in growth in
Hmm.
popularity, growth in musical development, growth in sort of what our company, what our band brought in. And we still had to work jobs. Like myself and Jeff, we worked at like Einstein's Bagels.
Yeah.
Ryan had like odds and ends jobs. I think Derek had odds and ends jobs. We would just do it. We had jobs that were cool with us leaving, because there's
Yeah.
also the novelty factor of oh, these guys are in bands and they're gonna leave. And like, also too, Jeffrey and I working at Einstein's fucking Bagels. It's like it's not exactly
Yeah.
a career builder.
Did,
It's just one of those things that like it doesn't really matter if I lost the job. They just so happen to be cool with him and I doing it. So
yeah. Did people come in a lot and they're like, "Hey, you guys are in Poison the Well"?
no, not necessarily, because you got to think too at the same time. Like social media didn't exist, and
Right.
like
Yeah.
the internet was still like AOL-ish. So like
Yeah.
nobody really knew. Plus too, like hardcore wasn't big. It wasn't really big at
Yeah.
the time. It was still this very niche thing, and maybe if like kids from that particular scene, from the punk scene or the hardcore scene came in,
Yeah.
they would recognize us, but we'd know them too. So it wasn't like this sort of like, you know,
Yeah. It wasn't a random thing.
it
No.
wasn't like
That's good.
celebrity fan dynamic. It wasn't that wasn't the thing. That just wasn't the thing at the time at all.
So how did you get the attention of Atlantic Records? I guess based off of Tear from the Red and everything else you've done, huh?
Well, there was a few things kind of at play there. So obviously the opposite came out, made some waves. We were very
Mm-hmm.
fortunate with that. We did Tear, and then that kind of continued the momentum. It sold a bunch of records, and we linked up with a manager that was just he was just a really great businessman. We're still friends with him today. He's this
Mm-hmm.
guy named Bill. He works at Golden Voice, which is like a very big large promotions company out in California. Like they do Coachella and Stagecoach and then all the affiliated festivals with Golden Voice. Um,
Mm-hmm.
he tour managed Hatebreed for a little bit. He was kind of dipping his toe into the touring world. And our friend Lorenzo from Sworn Enemy, which we had met on tour when we were out with Hatebreed, had linked up with Bill at some point. It was like, hey, you got to check this band Poison the Well out, blah, 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 blah. And he came to a show that we played in Las Vegas, probably around 2001, 2002, where we played in the fucking lobby of a venue. And it's because the venue was just massive. Because, once again, it's like the band wasn't that big. It was
Yeah.
like, we were drawing anywhere between 2 to 400 kids at the time, which was like massive for hardcore because bands weren't really doing that. Like bigger bands did it, but like it wasn't that common. So he came out, saw us, saw opportunity, and obviously, if you work for a massive promotion company in Los Angeles, the hub of music, he's going to have access to people that could get him to where he needs to go if he was trying to sell us to somebody. I think that mixed the fact that, you know, Poison the Well for Trustkill it was a selling point. So I think Josh was trying to sell Trustkill to something, whether another label is a sub label or distribution or something along those lines. So between having a manager that, had connections and the band still growing, the band being able to produce numbers, independently, we sold like 50,000 copies at the time of like Tear, and
Mm-hmm.
20 or 30 of Opposite, which was unheard of without having a really serious major label behind you. Plus the fact that you have a lot of hype. Plus the fact that Josh is trying to sell or do whatever with Trustkill and using us as leverage.
Mm-hmm.
I think that there was just a lot of hype and a lot of buzz around the band. And the way we kind of linked up with Atlantic was our old manager Bill at the time, got connected with this guy named Sean DeMont, who knew this guy named Bino, who manages Deftones and managed System of a Down and a bunch of bands, who had a sub label through his management company with Atlantic. And they were one of a few labels that we were talking to. Like we were talking to them. We were talking to DreamWorks before DreamWorks folded. There was interest from like one or two other companies, but DreamWorks and Atlantic Velvet Hammer were like the two ones that were the most interested.
Mm-hmm.
And we opted to go with Velvet Hammer Atlantic because Gabino was somebody that we thought understood the band because he had a band like System of a Down, which is very left of center. We're very
Mm-hmm.
different, but we're also left of center. So we
Yeah.
he would understand us a little bit more and understand what we wanted to do and where we wanted to go. And he was just one of those guys that wanted to win, And there's something to be said about somebody that will throw everything at something and really invest their entirety into it
Yeah.
by sheer ego. So we thought it was a net positive to have that guy on our side, on top of having a really great manager, on top of having the hype, on top of having all these sort of these things put into place. Um, Getting hooked up with Atlantic, via Velvet Hammer, to us seemed like it made the most sense because we could either have gone to a major label or we could have gone to like an Epitaph or Vagrant, which I didn't feel like at the time our band really fit in with. We weren't like a Vagrant band. We weren't an Epitaph.
Yeah.
We weren't Epitaph.
Yeah.
We were just kind of creating our own. We were trying to forge our own path and create our own thing. And that just seemed like it was like the best thing to do for us. It was the move that made sense at the time if we were going to try to become a big band on our own terms.
And if you have the opportunity to do a major label record, I feel like you got to do it. Like you got to try. I mean, why not?
Yeah, totally. And like we never really preached anything against that. So we weren't,
Yeah.
the whole sort of sellout thing. We didn't feel like it applied to us because it's like, well, we never, selling out to me is something that you do when you go against your principles. We were
Yeah.
never against it. So it's just like, it didn't really bother us at all. Obviously, at that point, I'm sure some people called sellouts, but it's just like, yeah, well, to whose standard?
I think that became much less of a thing by the mid 2000s,
Yeah.
or just maybe I'm older and I don't care, but I don't really think that was as much of a thing. Like, oh, major label, no, we're not going to listen to it.
I don't really remember people fucking crying out that much. It wasn't an overwhelming amount of hate.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I do remember some people being kind of up in arms about it. But it's like at the same time, it's just like, yeah, cool. You could start a band and, you get a major label offer, you could turn it down.
Yeah, someone's always going to bitch, so it just doesn't matter.
Totally don't give a shit. Yeah, we didn't give a fuck at all.
Yeah.
We were just kind of like, whatever. It's just like, we're going to live our lives we're going to live our lives based upon other people's standards. Like, no, fuck.
Yeah.
So
no, you can't. And You Come Before You is one of my favorite records. I think it was really the culmination of your evolving sound, and there's a lot of different stuff going on. It's just a really good LP. How was going out to Sweden to record that? That must have been a trip.
dude, it was a really great experience, man, because at that point you had the machine behind you. They gave us a bunch of money to record, like a lot of fucking money to record. They gave us a living advance, which obviously at that point we set it up in such a way that we could live, right? I mean, we didn't really have expenses. So, we set it up so we didn't have to work bullshit jobs. So we would be in the position to be able to go tour and pay our bills and go record and pay our bills. But the experience of the Yuko Before You was really great, man. That record was done in 2 different sessions. We wrote it all over the course of, the time of releasing Terror from the Red to the time that we recorded Yuko Before You. Just constantly writing and putting stuff together, even up until like the 11th hour. Like, we put the record together and we got the living advance to sort of take care of our needs. And, we got a ton of money to make a record. So we kind of talked about the direction we want to go and who we wanted to do it with. And, obviously around that time, Refuse Shape of Punk to Come was a big influencing factor. And we liked the production and, we got in contact with them and they liked what we were doing and they liked our attitude. So we booked some time at Sound City in Los Angeles, drove out there, did all the pre-production and all the basic tracking was done at Sound City. At that point, those dudes flew back to Sweden. We drove back to Florida because at the time we were all living in the Miami, Fort Lauderdale, West Palm Beach area. And I think we had a few days off and then we jumped on a flight and flew to Umeå, Sweden and finished up the record. Derek and Ryan did a bunch of overdubs. There was a bunch of percussion stuff done. Jeff did all the vocals out in Sweden, and then it was mixed and mastered. And it was a really great experience, man. It was a really great experience to do it. We being able to go over there and work with those dudes because they kicked our ass. Like prior to that, we hadn't had a producer telling us, hey, you're rushy, or you're behind, or you're not playing with feel, or you need to learn this or that. Like they definitely whipped us in the band into shape. Especially me as being the drummer. it definitely
Yeah.
into shape in terms of getting our act together and becoming like a real band. And
That's good. Yeah, I would like that because usually you just go in and the person's like, "Yep, go ahead, record." All right, that sounds good. Like to have some real direction that must be fantastic.
totally, totally, and it definitely,
Yeah.
at least speaking for myself, it definitely set me on a course of growing more as a player, as a drummer, and it's like having an influential figure or figures with those dudes, having influential figures that they're teaching you shit, and
Yeah.
they're not holding back any punches. They're not telling you it's going to be okay and then fixing it in your in their DAW, their recording program.
Hmm.
They're saying, no, you got to play that better. You got to play that better.
Yeah.
To
Yeah.
all of us, all our asses got kicked to different degrees.
Yeah.
So to me, that's what I look at Yukumbo for me. It's like, yeah, musically it's cool, and I appreciate those songs, and obviously those, especially to this day when we play live, kids still there's some I say our classics are on that record. Some of our classics
Yeah.
on that record, but I look at that as like that to me is record number one for Poison the Well because that's the record that we grew up. We went from being like a baby band to being an adult band. And,
Yeah, and you can hear it. That definitely comes through for sure on that one.
yeah, yeah,
And how were the tours around that time? Because we have major label backing now. Did you play like any random really big gigs?
yeah. I mean, from that, so that was like the launch. On becoming around that time, getting our asses kicked in the studio. Then it was like then hitting the live road and then having to take it up a few notches, right?
Yeah.
We did Warped Tour 2003. We toured with the Deftones. We did, Big Day Out in Australia. We did, a big run with Thursday when they were ginormous. We did a big run with Thrice when they were ginormous. Like
Yeah.
we did a Canadian tour with AFI. Like we weren't playing small rooms. We were playing very, very large rooms.
Mm-hmm.
And it was really stressful around that period of time because we needed to step it up. It's like baptism by fire, It's like you got to do it and you got to fucking do it quick. And
Yeah.
and yeah, I mean that was that run. Plus, two around that time, a lot of dudes were really unhappy. That was kind of like
Yeah.
the beginning of the end of like the lineup with me, Derek, Ryan, and Jeff. Derek was very, very unhappy. He musically wasn't, as far as I understood, he wasn't being fulfilled musically.
Mm-hmm.
Wanted to go in a very different direction, and he had his personal reasons behind that. And yeah, you could tell on tour he wasn't very happy. And
Yeah.
yeah, at the end of touring on that record, he quit. We were making plans on record number 4, and we had a completely different record. There was a record in between You Come Before You and Versions that Derek had written completely on his own, essentially,
Wow.
and was dictating to everybody what to play, and it just didn't sound like Poison the Well. And
What did it sound like? I'm curious.
I think there's some songs that are floating around on the internet. Really jangly guitars. The drums were pretty static. There wasn't a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
It was one guy at the time taking control of things. I'm assuming
Yeah.
to make himself happy and to fulfill that itch. And
Yeah.
it wasn't working because Poison the Well was not built on one person. It was built on at that time for people.
Right.
So yeah, he quit. Our bass player at the time, Jeff Bergman, who played up a Curl Up and Die, he wasn't happy. He quit.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the beginning of kind of like the core 4 becoming the core 3.
Yeah.
Myself, Derek, I'm sorry, myself, Jeffrey, and Ryan. And then that's where kind of versions pick up. Like we did that record with Derek, we scrapped it. We didn't actually, I'm sorry, we didn't fully do the record. We wrote it and then did pre-production. And
Okay.
and then then it got scrapped, and then the Swedes had to go back to Sweden, and it was just a lot of money wasted, a lot of time, just whatever. But Derek quit, and me and Jeffrey and Ryan figured out, hey, we want to continue to do this. We have a great appreciation for it. We love it, and we still think we can do it because Jeff was a big part of the band, I was a big part of the band, and Ryan was a very big part of the band.
Yeah.
So that's where I look at it like the third version of the band started. Like the first version was like, Ari, Dwayne, myself, Ryan, Andrew, and then Russ. that was the Distance era. And then from Opposite Tear and You Come Before You, that was the era of like me, Derek, Brian, and Jeffrey. And then
Hmm.
Versions was the beginning of the era of, the three of us. Of,
Right.
me, Jeffrey, and then Ryan, and figuring out like kind of what we want to do. Obviously, we brought other people to play in. We brought another guitar player to play in the band and write, and we brought in several bass players, and trying to figure out what worked chemistry wise and what gelled the most. But it wasn't until we did, moving ahead a little bit, it wasn't until we started working with our current bass player, Brad Grace, that he kind of filled in the fourth role of the band.
So, and there was 4 years between You Come Before You and Versions, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So was the band together that whole time? Were you touring that whole time?
So like a year and a half, 2 years was the touring of You Come Before You.
Yeah.
Probably like a year and a half of it being released was the touring. And then, obviously we attempted to do another record that went south. We scrapped it. We regrouped as the core three of us, and then we attempted to find what the next sound was for what would have been Versions. We're like, okay, well, what is this? What is this record supposed to be? Where is it going to go? What's the sound that we want? Like, how is it going to represent what we're doing? So it just took a lot of time to get the ball rolling and to figure it out. And also, too, we're dealing with, Ryan, his father passed away.
Oh.
We were also dealing with label issues because Atlantic thought that we were going to go more of a pop road. Okay, we turned in You Come Before You. We let them do what they wanted to do. And now they got to deliver the goods. They were okay with You Come Before You because we were like, hey, we're going to sell, around 100,000 records. This is part of the
Yeah.
plan. Okay, we're on board with that. They're on board with that. Well, obviously now for Versions, it's time to deliver. And that was not necessarily where we were as a band. We were very injured, I guess, between Derek quitting, Ryan's dad dying, trying to figure out what our identity was outside of not having Derek there. And it takes time, man. You got to write a lot of songs before you start figuring out, okay, this is it. We're starting to hit stuff that's cool.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, it's like you're starting over again almost, and you're figuring out who you are. And there's a lot of. It's a very interesting album. You're starting to experiment more with like the almost cave-in sound. It's like the rock and roll meets hardcore, and then there's just a lot of interesting instrumentation in there, the slide guitar and all that stuff. I read an old interview with Ryan where he said he's really into surf rock and that type of stuff. So, what kind of bands were you into at the time? What was everyone bringing to the table?
Oh man, music for me, I'm trying to remember what I was into at that time. I think I was definitely making the transition from heavy stuff to just maybe a little bit more like electronic, a little bit more indie, a little bit more rock. That was kind of where I started going, I want to say backwards, but I started falling back in love with the records that influenced me to play drums, like Nirvana,
Yeah.
Hero, or Soundgarden, Super Unknown. Really discovering like the full catalog of like the Beatles and having a great appreciation for where they started and where they ended. It was just more of an expansion. So instead of it just being like, oh, I like punk and I like hardcore and a little bit of this, a little bit of that, it was like, for me, it was just growing up as a musician, like discovering the full Led Zeppelin catalog, not like the hits, and like I said, discovering
Yeah.
Beatles, and then understanding what was kind of going on in rock at the time, like not like Nickelback or like any of that sort of stuff, but like more like, I guess you'd say more like classic rockish. So that's where I was at the time. To me, when I think of Versions, it makes me think of like a really cool eclectic Beatles record. Not saying that the songs are as popular or influential or as good, but that was kind of like, for me, that was like the point of genesis.
So, and you moved to Ferret Records for that one, and Ferret has always been a solid label, a lot of good bands. How was it? How was it working with them?
It was great. Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, Carl was really great to work with. I mean, we'd known him for years. We'd known everybody, in the Ferret family, and when we parted ways with Trustkill, it was we weren't on good terms. Let's just put
Right.
it that way.
Yeah.
And moving to Ferret, we kind of wanted to go back to a place that we had more control and a place that was going to be excited to release a record. They were,
Understandably, yes.
yeah, they were going to let us be. They were going to let us be us. And
Yeah.
we definitely got that with Ferret. Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, like, Versions was put out on Ferret, the Tropic Rot was put out on Ferret, and then we put out, a series of 7 inches on there, of B-sides from the version sessions.
Hmm.
And we really felt at the end of the day that, that Ferret really did good by us. And that, I don't have anything negative to say about the experience. Aside, well, the only thing is that, obviously Ferret folded, and
Yeah.
being able to get a hold of accounting to see where we stand with those records has been fucking near to impossible.
Yeah. That was going to be a question for me. We know you and many other bands had difficulties with Trustkill, and I'm not going to ask you to rehash all that stuff.
Yeah.
But do you have any difficulties today still with your back catalog, or did we move it over and like everything is as taken care of as it can be?
Well, yeah, without divulging too many details with Trustkill, essentially at the end of the day, we came to an agreement to where those masters reverted back to us and all the rights were reverted back to us. So
That's great.
our company owns, our band, our company owns The Opposite of December and Tear from the Red. And, we own, the Botchla video. We also own Distance Makes the Heart Grow Fonder, even though that's a lesser wanted, desired record. It's still part of history. So
Yeah.
at least we own those 2 full lengths in that EP. So we have full control over what we want to do, which is great. We came to some sort of agreement with Josh before Trustkill folded. With You Come Before You versions and Tropic Rot, not so much. Unfortunately,
Hmm.
both of them got, moved over to a company called Rhino.
Hmm.
And, you know, they'll license us the records, but we don't really get to do what we want in such a way with those records, if that makes any sense.
It does.
No,
Yeah. And
absolutely.
Tropic Rod, that was your last LP, and
Yep.
that's one of my favorites.
Me
It's
too.
like I hear a lot of cave-in influence. There's like spacey rock and just a great hardcore / rock combination. It's
Mhm.
how was recording that? Like give me some stories around that one.
So recording Tropic Rock was interesting because we wrote that record probably over the course of like 2 to 3 months, maybe 4.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember the time period. I was living in Miami at the time, so it was probably around 2007, 2008.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, we wrote it in a condemned old bar up in West Palm Beach that our bass player Brad had access to.
Nice.
And originally we were slated to do the record with Jay Robbins of Jawbox.
Yeah.
Very last minute, he had to pull out because he was having some health issues with his son.
Mm-hmm.
And we were good to go. We had the songs, we had everything booked. We needed to get this record done, and we needed to get it done ASAP. And we were able to. We spoke to a few people, but at the end of the day, it turned out Steve Evans was the guy. Steve had some time to be able to do the record, and his budget or our budget worked with his needs. And yeah, man, we booked it out. We were all living in Fort Lauderdale, Miami at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, we fucking got in our van and drove out to California and tracked drums up in Calabasas, and then went down to Steve's studio in Garden Grove and tracked everything else. I'd like to say that it was really, crazy, but it really wasn't. The most crazy thing was
Yeah.
we changed producers at the very last moment.
Right. Right. And then the band went on hiatus right after that, right? We just decided we're taking a break.
Sort of. So we put out the record, and we thought that we could regain some momentum. And at the end of the day, I don't think what we were doing was driving what was going on popular in music at the time that was popular. Plus, dude,
Mm-hmm.
the whole industry was going through a rapid shift, paradigm shift. How we consumed music was different. It was pre-streaming, so people were still down music, yada yada yada. And we just
Yeah.
didn't get the right tours to be able to promote the record, and it was oversaturation, right? Like basic law of economics,
Yeah.
supply and demand, and we were just oversupplying and oversupplying and oversupplying, and the attendance at shows wasn't good. We were just felt like we were beating a dead horse. It felt like we needed to put it down for a little bit because we had just been, you know, not getting back what we were putting into it. That's when we decided to sort of put things on hold.
Gotcha. So when did you end up moving out to California?
Not too long after the band went on hiatus.
Yeah.
I was living in Florida. The band band obviously went on hiatus.
Yeah.
I just Florida didn't really have anything for me anymore. There wasn't really anything there that was holding me there, and I felt like if I was going to continue to play with people and pursue music, that that I was going to have to either go to New York, Nashville, or California, and I preferred California because of the weather, and I knew a lot of people out here. So it just logically it made sense.
Yes. And you met our friend Vadim Taver out there, who's now been touring and filling in on second guitar.
Yep.
For the band. How is it with Vadim? Do you have any dirt on him you can give us? And he kind of told us how he ended up in the band and how you guys are
Yeah.
How you guys are friends.
No dirt really. It's just the first few weeks I was living in California, I went to go see Cave In and Coalesce at Chain Reaction with a buddy of mine, and Vadim was there, and we reconnected because obviously I'd known him from This Day Forward and the Shaw House and just years of touring and so on and so forth. So yeah, with Vadim, man, I just reconnected with him, and him and I kind of started to get like a little musical project going, but it never really got off the ground.
Yeah.
And then we remained friends. And when it came time to do the reunion stuff, kind of getting back together 2015, 16, I suggested him, but it didn't really work out. And then we
Yeah.
booked another round of shows where we played like Gramercy in New York, played Toronto, and we did like a festival in Quebec, and then we played some West Coast shows. Vadim, we thought he was the kind of, we wanted to try him out. And
Yeah.
ever since then, he's been the guy because his personality meshes in really great. He's good with the the dynamic, and he's good with the position in the band, and he's just like, yeah, I want to do this, and he's good with being a hired guy. So it just works. It's beneficial for both of us because I know he's super busy. He's a relationship and teaches chess and tutors.
Yeah, he was working for NASA at one point. He's the best. He's smart and he's a pro. He's just an all around great person.
Totally, 100%, man. Nothing but good things to say about Vadim.
He's going to teach my daughter. So I'm going to have a video conference with him on Friday, with him and my family. And he's going to teach chess to my girls.
It's awesome.
Oh, nice. I remember when Vadim was going to be playing those initial shows with Poison the Well, just picking it, because I'm curious about like the process and the mechanics. I'm like, how do you learn the songs? Do you figure them out? Do they show you, like, and I'm just fascinated by that whole process because Vadim and I talked about this on the show. Like, we have this recurring dream where, we have to play a gig.
Yeah.
And they're like, all right, get out there and play the gig now. Like, but we don't know how to play the songs. So it's just like, it's he kind of walked through all the undertaking of learning the songs and just drilling them until he had them down.
Yeah, the songs are really deceptive, man. They're really deceptive. They're challenging because it's like what you think is being played is probably not being played because Ryan's a master of coming up with weird chords and weird voicings. So you think it's one thing, and he's like, nope, 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 and then he plays the chord for you, and you're like, oh shit, I don't even know what the fuck that is, But that's one of the reasons
Exactly
to come in because he has enough musical knowledge where Ryan can say stuff to him, and he knows how to play the stuff, and personality wise, he fits in, and that whole thing, that whole dynamic.
Yeah, and I listened to a lot of the records again, and there's a lot when you listen to them now with older with a fresh ear. There's a lot more going on than you realize, especially on You Come Before You. Like the guitar would go here and here, and then I'd always be like, okay, it's going to go here, and it would just go in the complete opposite direction, and I was like, whoa, like there's a lot of nuance.
Yeah, man, that's Ryan and Derek.
Yeah.
That's just kind of how those dudes rolled when they were putting together all the guitar stuff. I mean, they were great. They were a great combo, and even now with just Ryan, he's great too. So,
and how did we decide we're going to play some shows again? Was it just enough time, and everyone's like, hey, let's do it?
It was definitely enough time had gone by, and there was just we were getting just more and more offers because once again, supply and demand. We weren't
Yeah.
supplying, and then there was a demand building. And the resurgence of all that era of that music becoming popular again. Um, it's been really amazing, man. I'm not gonna lie. I mean, I think right now, Poison the Well is probably the biggest we've ever been, and it's it was just a want to actually be able to play together as a band.
Hmm.
Because we didn't stop touring and playing with one another because we hated each other or we didn't think that there was musical chemistry. We were just burnt out.
Yeah.
Years and years and years of trying to push something that fundamentally needed to be put down for a little bit. And that was like the biggest thing, man. There was always the want to play, but like at what point? Like we all kind of needed to walk away and see what our identity was outside of Poison the Well.
Yeah, and I feel like the field is kind of settled. Like back in 2009-ish, or like we were talking about before when Tropic Rock came out,
Hmm.
like you said, the playing field changed. That everyone's downloading music. I think everyone was maybe at an age where they don't know what they are or what they're listening to, and eventually, now I feel like it's more stabilized. Like, yes, we have streaming, but bands tour a lot. People are older. People are buying merch, and for me, I don't have this stupid like, oh, I don't listen to this or I don't listen to that, or I'm just like, I like what I like, and
Yeah,
I don't have to be just this or just that. I can like hardcore. I can like post rock. I can like hip hop. I can like whatever I want, and I'm gonna go see it, and I'm gonna buy merch because I can afford it now.
exactly. Yeah, man.
Yeah.
It was just a weird time, and yeah, I do feel like our audience has definitely grown up. They're definitely more accepting of the band's entire catalog, whereas before, there was people that are like only into Opposite or only into Opposite and Tear, and some
Hmm.
people like You Go Before You, then just some people that like versions, but they don't have any affiliation with like hardcore. They're just I guess just outside of that world. And then
Yeah.
nobody really I don't really feel like anybody grasps Tropic Rock too much. Whereas I feel like
Hmm.
the records have had time to grow on people and become their own sort of entities on their own. And
Yeah. If anyone listening to this has not heard Tropic Rut, jump on Spotify or wherever you listen to music and do it. It's a really good LP.
yeah, man, that's my favorite record. Oh, my
Yeah.
personal record. Like I'm glad that that was a record that we left off on. Like I feel like it was a very good note to leave. And if
Yeah.
on the road we choose to do new music, then we'll pick up, and it'll be Poison the Well of 2021 or 2022 or whatever. But if we decide to just say, hey, our catalog is 2 EPs and 5 LPs,
Hmm.
um, yeah, I'm very happy with Tropic Rock being the last record in our band's catalog slash legacy.
Yeah, absolutely. As well, you should be. Who knows? Maybe it'll grow like exponentially in time. So when you're playing in like 2030, the people will be beating down the doors demanding to hear the whole record live.
Yeah, you never know, man.
Yeah. So let's talk about some of the other stuff you've done. You've done a lot of session work and touring with different bands. You've
Yeah.
played with Dhani Harrison. How did that get arranged?
So I met Danny through playing with a electronic pop artist out of LA called Big Black Delta.
Hmm.
I met him through a guy that was a big Poison the Well fan, and just times made sense, and he needed a drummer, and it was something completely different. I went from Poison the Well to moving to California and attempting to get something going with Vadim.
Hmm.
That didn't happen, and then it was like I wanted to branch out from like hardcore and punk, and
Yeah.
it made sense to sort of go in that world. And he was super cool, and it was a great experience. I met a lot of people, and one of those people was Danny. He was
Yeah.
he's a very big fan of Big Black Delta, and yeah, I was rounding an end of a tour with Census Fail because I was hired by them to play
Hmm.
whatever, and I got hit for him. He was releasing a solo record and wanted me to be a part of it, like the touring part of it. So yeah, it's playing with him. He's a great dude. He's a super super awesome guy. He's super fun. His intention for music is very pure, and the band has great chemistry, and everybody in the band is really awesome. And it's musically speaking, it's really fun. And I got to do a bunch of stuff with him that I haven't been able to do before. So whenever he wants to do something, he'll give me a call, and until then, I got other irons in the fire. So
Oh yes, many. It looks
I was
like.
gonna say,
Did you ever show Danny Poison the Well? Like, yo, check this out.
no, not really, man. I didn't really talk about that. I
Yeah,
remember. I think he thinks like Poison Well is like a metal band, but like
yeah,
that, it's not really his thing. So
yeah,
we don't really talk about that. There's other
yeah,
things we
yeah.
talk about, and you know, it's funny. People know me as being in Poison the Well, but he associates me being in like Big Black Delta, and like
Mm-hmm.
as little to no like idea of Poison the Well. He kind of gets it, but it's
Mm-hmm.
not his world or his taste. So
Gotcha. And so you worked with Greg Puciato too on his solo record.
yeah, yeah. I've known Greg for a very long time. We're buds, and I was out on tour with Danny over the summer. We were supporting Electric Light Orchestra.
Mm-hmm.
I came home, and not too long after, I think I was home for about 3 weeks to a month, he hit me up and he was like, "Hey, would you be interested in doing this? I have a bunch of songs, and I think that your style of playing will sort of, will fit with this." So he just started sending me songs, and I was going to my studio and demoing stuff. And at the end, I ended up tracking 9 songs on the record. I think so. If I remember correctly, there's 15 songs. I played drums on 9. Ben Crawler from Converge played on 1, and then Chris Penny, the original drummer for Dillinger, played on another. And then 3
Mm-hmm.
songs are electronic. So Greg programmed. Um, did all the programming, and it's cool, man. Yeah, I mean, like it's it's a little all over the place, but that's not necessarily like a bad thing. It's like all over the place in the sense of it's telling he's telling his story musically, and the things that
Cool.
he's into, because he's into everything from like dark electronic music to like crazy heavy music to like very 90s influenced kind of like grunge stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So it spans the gamut of what he's into, and I always look at records when it comes from people that I respect. It's storytelling. It's not commerce. It's art and story. So
Exactly. And the way you describe the record is exactly how I imagine Greg's record would sound, like industrial slash noisy slash metallic, grungy, like all that stuff.
it runs. Yeah, it completely runs it runs all of that, because that's what he's into. And he wants, if he's going to release a solo record, he wants it to be, as far as I interpret it. Yeah, it has to represent who he is. Like, he has his long ass career, Dillinger forever.
Yeah.
Fucking what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 records with them.
Mm-hmm.
Been doing Black Queen for a while, which is 2 records. He's been working with Jerry Cantrell, so it's like, and Killer Be Killed as well. So it's just like it's gonna have, his solo record is gonna be a little bit of that all wrapped up, especially if it's, if Ben plays drums on a song, Chris plays drums on a song, and then I play drums on the rest, and there's some programming. Um, it's gonna be cool, man. First single that he put out was with Chris playing drums, and it's awesome. And I believe the next song he's going to be releasing sometime soon, maybe a little bit before, a little bit after this, is either going to have me or Ben. I think it's going to have me, because I was texting with him, and the 2 songs he was thinking as like the next single were both songs that I had played drums on.
Mm-hmm.
But, knowing Greg, he could completely change his mind and go a different direction.
Yeah.
So yeah, more likely than not, it'll be one of the 9 songs that I played drums on. And I think that he's setting up like a late summer release for this record.
Mm-hmm.
So I believe he's every month or so he's going to be kind of releasing songs to sort of keep everybody's do a nice build up, like a nice campaign to build up.
Yeah. Well, I'm looking forward to that. That's going to be good.
It's cool, man. It's cool. If I have a few songs that I play drums that he sent me, and either completely mixed or partially mixed, and they all sound killer. He did a great job. He sang, played guitar, played bass, and programmed some shit. And I believe Steve Evans is mixing it, so it's gonna sound rad. So he is really attempting to put his best foot forward. Especially too if it's like your personal name's attached to it.
Yeah.
It has to be a home run right out the gate, and I believe what he's going to do is, it's definitely going to, the people that are fans of Black Queen, Killer Be Killed, Dillinger Escape Plan, I think they're going to really like. I think they're really going to like it.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So, a question for you. I mean, you probably didn't imagine that your life would end up like this, just being a professional percussionist and touring with all these bands and doing everything that you have and having the legacy that you have. Like, did you have anything else in mind? Like, this is where my life is going to go before all this stuff happened?
Not really, man. I mean, initially, I just wanted to play drums in the band and be a guy in a band. I didn't think
Yeah.
it would be a situation in which the industry would completely change, and I would go from being in a band to then being a hired musician to then go back into being a band and being a hired musician.
Yeah.
Like right now, it's like I'm a member of a band that has a cool legacy and can draw kids. And at any point, we could say, "Hey, we're going to play some shows," and they'll probably sell out. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And at
Yeah.
the same time, I can get a call from Danny, or I can get a call from Census Fail, or I can get a call from Greg, or fucking whoever else. I mean, I've gotten hit up by people you wouldn't imagine that, to do stuff, either go jam or go record or do whatever.
Can
Um,
you give us some names?
um, well, the one person I do want to mention, I can't because I had to sign an NDA.
Ah.
But I will say that he was definitely a voice of the '80s, and he's definitely a legendary figure when it comes to like '80s power, not power metal, but like power rock.
Yeah.
He ended up touring. He had gotten my information through this dude named Noah Harmon, who plays guitar in Danny's band, and thought my style would be really great. And we jammed and it was cool, but he didn't end up touring. He didn't end up doing anything. I think he wanted to get in the room and play, and maybe at the end of the day, the road life wasn't for him.
Hmm.
But yeah, like a legend. I got to jam with a legend and play, one or two songs that are pretty fucking cool.
That's awesome, and I'm just fascinated by everyone's path in life. Like the most important thing in the world to me was being in a band, and I just wanted to get good enough at an instrument to be in a band, and I was, and I don't know, there usually wasn't the right fit, or it wasn't exactly what I wanted to be doing, and then I just I haven't played in a band in a while,
Mhm.
but we're doing this thing now, and that's cool. And I get to reconnect with people I haven't spoken to in decades, and I
Yeah.
get to talk to cool musicians who I'm into. So it's just, you just never know. You just never know where life is going to take you, and that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, man. I mean, I'm definitely very proud and stoked of what I've done so far, and I don't feel like my journey's over at all. I do feel like I have a lot more to go in terms of
Yeah,
a player.
yeah. I feel like this is only the beginning. Like only in the last 3 years have I really started doing all the things I want to do, and I'm
Mm.
just always excited about what's going to come up next because you just never know.
Yeah, man, and just being open to it. And this is what I do for a living. And
Yeah.
I work with people. I have my own band, with three good friends, and I work with bands and artists and shit like that. And that's what I'm going to continue to do. And I'm going to try to build some sort of legacy for myself, and a solid structure to be able to make money and do what I love doing. And
Yeah.
that's my plan. Right now, I'm literally bouncing back and forth between Danny, Poison the Well, and Greg. Um,
Mhm.
I played on Greg's record. That's going to come out sometime 2020. Poison the Well. We had a few festivals slated. I don't know what's happening with them, considering what's going on with COVID-19. But whether it happens in 2020 or 2021, we're slated to play Psycho Vegas. We're slated to play Furnace Fest. Um, you know, that's going to happen in some capacity or another. Maybe not this year, maybe next year, maybe this year. Who knows?
Mhm.
And whenever Danny hits me up and he wants to do something, because he's a pretty busy guy, he scores movies and TV shows, and obviously he has to sort of balance his father's legacy as well. And he's a really busy
Yeah.
guy. So every 6 months to a year, I'll hear from him, and he'll be like, "Hey, do you want to go fucking do blah blah blah, or are you available for this or that?" And so it's just balancing those three things on top of whatever else pops up. because the most random shit fucking pops up. Like doing a session for a friend of mine that used to play in that band Hollywood Undead. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Not really my band, not really my style of music or my thing, but it's just like random. You know what I mean? Like, okay, cool. Like, yeah, you're doing a solo record. You want to release some stuff? Okay, cool. Yeah, you want me to play drums on some songs? Yeah, totally. Let's do it.
Check out Greg Puciato's solo record when it comes out. It features Mr. Chris Hornbrook. Once the music industry opens back up, whenever that is, we don't know. Make sure you get out there and check out Dhani Harrison and Poison the Well and Greg when he's touring. And what are there any other projects you're going to be out there on the road doing, or is it mostly those three?
Those three. I mean, I got hit up to write and tour with another band, the sort of electronic band situation, but I'm not really at liberty to say anything further because the way things go, you never know. But I'm supposed to start writing with one of the songwriters from the band, and then probably record either late this year, early next year. But until we've sat down in a room and started jamming and discussing the terms and all that sort of stuff, I don't want to say. But there's another iron in the fire that may or may not come to fruition. It looks like it will. It's just taking a while because the dude is scoring something right now, and then another guy is working on a few musical projects. So, like I said, I don't want to speak to it until it's a little bit more solid. But there's another potential thing kind of going on that could be really cool and open a lot of doors and be really fun.
Awesome. And yeah, as a rule, you can't talk about it until it's like out, basically. That's a hard lesson I learned. Whenever something's going on and I talk about it before it, like you get that feeling in your, you get that feeling in your chest, like, should I talk about it yet? And when you do, it never happens. And when you don't, it sometimes happens. So you got to go with that. Yeah.
Yeah. It's also too respect for my two friends involved with that project. It's like, I'm sure that they want to approach, if I'm going to be in it in some capacity, whether I'm an actual member or a hired guy, or they want me to be involved with like press photos or whatever. I don't know how they want to approach it, but my whole attitude is like, I've learned by being a hired guy, there's a few things you have to be smart about. You have to obviously, clear social media things with artists. You can't just aimlessly, do live video and take pictures and all that shit without understanding what their boundaries are. And don't talk about things prematurely. I mean, obviously, I'm talking about it in such an ambiguous way that it doesn't really matter.
Exactly.
So it's fine, but I'm sure they wouldn't appreciate me talking about writing a record, even before we stepped in a room, naming them, and it just reveals a little too much. And I have to be respectful that at the end of the day, it's their thing and I'm being contracted to do it. And, how they want to approach it and reveal it to the world and, whatever they want to fucking do, that's their move. With Greg, it's like I didn't say anything forever because I was waiting for him to say something, and then did an interview with Krang and then talked about it, and then, they posted it. So yeah, then at that point, it's fine for me to talk about it. But prior to that, I didn't say anything. I was like, I just played on a friend's solo record and it should be really cool,
Yeah, you got to play it cool. You got to know how to do it. And it sounds like that's what you're doing. So keep doing it. Well, Chris, we want to thank you so much for coming on the show. This has been really awesome.
Yeah.
And, I was thinking about coming down to Furnace Fest, but that's probably going to be delayed. We'll see. But, we'll see each other again for sure.
For sure, man. Yeah, if we're in the same room, come up and say hi.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you, Chris, so much.
Chris, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Yeah, dudes, thanks for having me, and I appreciate it.
There you have it, folks. The Chris Hornbrook interview. That's another good one for the books. That was awesome.
That was really, really good. And the cool part is like, he's one of these people that's just, he's just making a go of it with like making music as a living.
And very eclectic, involved in like so many awesome things. It was just cool.
That's the thing is I think his style of drumming lends his talents to a lot of different places. Not necessarily just, like hardcore and that kind of stuff. So
no, the guy is a pro and he knows how to carry it with everybody. It's just awesome. And just this podcast in general, one, I'm glad we're getting good guests because I thought it was just going to be us, and I would just have to talk to you the whole time. And how many times can we be like, remember that time we went to the Stalag, and like, remember when we saw this band? But we're getting good guests, and people are really like helpful with this thing, which I didn't expect. Like, people have offered to get us other guests, because usually when I'm involved in anything, people are like, all right, whatever, or they say nothing. But this thing is like, I'm just really happy with the way it's been going.
Yeah, you sent me that text. You were like, hey, I got so-and-so to do this, and so-and-so asked for this, and I'm like, uh-huh. And you're like, I always expect people to just tell me to fuck off.
Yeah. Or just not respond. That's what I'm used to. I'm not used to helpfulness.
Yeah.
I just expect the worst. So what are you up to now? Listen to this, right? Here's what's going on in my life. One, I have to come in first place in Call of Duty Warzone. That's the main goal in my life. I just want to win. I've come in second. I've come in third. I've come in fourth. I want to come in first place.
So, are you like? I mean, here's the only thing I guess I doesn't, because I'm not like a video game person.
Yeah.
You're playing? So this is online Call of Duty. So you're playing with people from around the world.
Yes.
Okay. So think about it like I always thought about it like this. We have kids like at my school that are like one of the kids that I know is like nationally ranked.
Yeah.
For I forget what it is, like Super Smash Brothers or something like that. Mm-hmm. And I'm always like, yo, how much time do you spend playing? And he's like, well, when we don't have school, like 8 to 10 hours a day. And I'm like, oh, okay. So this is like your life. So if you ever sit down and play and you're like, oh my God, that kid beat me, or so-and-so beat me, it's like, that might be someone who's just, this is the only thing they have.
Yeah, I play from the time I'm done work till like 9 o'clock usually. On nights I have free, of which there are like 3. But I was doing really bad, and I watched a YouTube video about how to improve yourself, and I started getting in the top 10. You play on a team with like 3 other people, so it's good because it's not all on you. But I'm getting there, and I've been watching. This is going to be really nerdy, but someone made a 13-hour YouTube video out of Final Fantasy VII, the original.
Uh-huh.
It's like a movie of the game, basically, like all the cutscenes and dialogue. So I've been watching that a little bit every day.
Okay.
This is the shit I do with my free time.
I actually, it's funny is I bought one of those Raspberry Pis. Do you know what that is?
No.
So Raspberry Pi is like like you can program it yourself. It's basically like most people use it for you can use them for like everything from like home security to like kind of like modify it to whatever your needs are. But I run emulators on them, and I play Nintendo and Super Nintendo, and then Sega Genesis games on them. Yeah. And one of the things that I played on Nintendo, and I was like, oh, I remember this game. I loved it so much, and I went to go play it. Do you remember Dragon Warrior for Nintendo?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Go back and play that game if you have them. Like, if you have the time, or next time you're over my house, I'll fucking boot it up for you.
It's a dense game, right? It's like a long game.
I remember playing that for like months at a time as a kid, and as I'm playing it now, I'm like, holy shit, how did I have the fucking patience for this? I don't remember ever being this like as an adult. I got a couple times where like I lost, and I had me restart like at a checkpoint, or like I got stuck, and I was like, Jesus Christ. I'm like, I don't even know. Like when I was like 9, I was like, oh, okay, I'll just keep going. Or like I had the guidebooks for especially Dragon Warrior 2 and stuff. Like
that game, we rented it a couple times when I was a kid, and I would play it for like 5 minutes and be like, I don't know what this is. I can't play this. I think I would like it now, but back then I couldn't even comprehend it.
Yeah, it was the first game that I got that was like, all right, you're going to go to fight somebody. And it's like, all right, cool. And you're like, all ready. And then a list comes up, and it's like, do you want to attack using this? And I'm like, what the fuck is this? Like, where's the punch button? Like, this is nothing. Use your spell. God damn it. Is this is this Dungeons and Dragons? Is that what this is? Is this video game done? God damn it. I got tricked.
It is. So, and I have the new Final Fantasy VII remake, which I'm really anxious to play.
That like just came out, right?
Yeah. But I'm still working through Doom Eternal, so I don't want to start another game. I can't be playing 3 games at the same. Like, see, even I have limits. I'm like, I can't start another one. Plus, I want to make more time for my relationship. So when I go over there on the weekend, I just don't even bring the PlayStation with me anymore.
Oh, okay.
I'm like, I just got to take this out of the equation. So yeah, it'll be better for the overall household.
That's it. I used to when I first started visiting Kelly, so my wife is from like a very rural part of the Poconos,
Yeah.
and there's nothing to do. So
Yeah.
like you can't be like, oh, let's go to the movies or let's go to the there's nothing. Like the closest movie theater is like almost an hour away.
Yeah.
So when I would go up there, I would bring my guitar, and I have that Ibanez Prestige, like the real like the saber body, like super thin one. So it's really light to it's not heavy to work with. I can move it around the house really easy. I would bring it up there, and she finally got to the point where she was like, we only see each other on the weekends because you live in, suburban Philadelphia and I live up here. You drive 2.5 hours to get up here. Well, whatever, 2 hours. And
Yeah.
you sit on the couch and fucking play guitar for 6 of the hours that we're together. Like, she's like, stop bringing the guitar, please. Just stop bringing it's such a gigantic waste of our time because we only have a certain amount of time together, and you're spending a good chunk of it sitting there staring at the guitar.
I'm relieved to hear that I'm not the only person who has done this ridiculous stuff.
Oh,
and
I'm 100%. Yeah,
have to have these conversations.
Yeah, no, I'm the worst with stuff. I'm like the most like, and I think it comes out of like most of the time. Thank God, my wife is one of those people that she is not like in public. She's very like kind of reserved, but
Yeah.
with me and our close friend, she will speak her mind. And there's a lot of times where I've done stuff in the middle of like afterwards. She hasn't said anything in the moment because we're in public, but like as soon as we get in the car or something like that, she'll look at me and she'll be like, "What the fuck was that?" I'm like, "What?" And she'll be like, "Are you seriously that inconsiderate? Do you realize that you were on your phone playing a golf game, or you were texting Keith the entire time we were supposed to be?" That woman was talking about. We met somebody and it was like Kelly's friend from work, I think.
Yeah.
And we had seen them at a store, like Lowe's or something like that. And I introduced myself, and then I like kind of like drifted into the background because this woman was talking to Kelly about like school stuff. So I wasn't paying attention. Well, she must have like walked off of like talking about school stuff like in the first 30 seconds, and then started talking about like all the terrible things in her life, like the recent death of a parent, her divorce, like all, and there's me just standing there like completely oblivious to what's happening around me, and I'm just like, Jesus Christ, who the fuck posted this thing? Like, and I'm like, not even paying attention to what's happening, and this woman is pouring her heart out. And we walked away, and as soon as we turned the corner, like she didn't even wait for the car. As soon as we turned the corner and that woman couldn't see us anymore, she grabbed me by the back of my elbow, like right in the inside of my arm. It hurt so bad. I was like, "What is the problem?" She's like, "Did you seriously just zone out while that woman is pouring her heart out?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, probably."
We're clueless. We're just clueless.
I think that's another thing is that it doesn't come out of a place of like, I'm going to intentionally ignore what you're doing. However, I'm also not going to pay enough attention to know what you are doing. Like, I'm just going to like, I think of it in terms of, we were at, I forget what it was. It was something important, like a wedding or something like that. And I wouldn't stop talking about it because anybody that skateboards, when you see certain types of structures, you look at it and go, "I could totally fucking skate that." Like, so outside of this, it was a wedding. I'm almost positive it was a wedding. It was a venue that had this really gorgeous sculpture outside, but it was, part of it was concrete, part of it was like wrought iron. But you could see from the outside of it, you could totally like kind of ollie up it. You can skate on the top. Like you could definitely do tricks up this thing. And then literally as soon as you were done, like skate the rail on the outside of it.
Did you just keep saying to everyone like, "Hey, I could skate off of that"?
Yeah, I brought it up to everybody. Like,
were they like, okay? Fine.
I don't know. And I would bring it up, like, even when it wasn't within, like, you couldn't see it. Like, I was seeing people, like, we were out on, like, this, like, patio kind of deck area, and I would see people, and I'd be like, yo, do you see that fucking sculpture out front? And they would be like, yeah, kind of. And I'm like, you drove right past it. It was, like, right in the parking lot. It was, like, a circle. And they're like, okay. I'm like, yeah, it had, like, a big concrete thing. It was, like, shaped like a triangle. And they're like, okay. I'm like, yo, do you skate? And they're like, I should have opened with that question. Like, hey, do you skateboard? No? Okay, then I'm not going to go on a fucking rant about how you can skate.
Because even right now, I'm like, what's the fucking point? Yeah, so come on.
Yeah, asshole. Like, but because in my brain, I'm going like, everybody saw the same thing the way I just saw that. Therefore, I'm going to engage and speak with you about it the same way.
Thanks for being here with us again. New episodes are going to continue to drop every Monday morning at 9 a.m. as long as the schedule holds and nothing catastrophic happens. So please subscribe to us on your podcast medium of choice. Please review and give us high ratings. Even if you want to give us a low rating, go ahead. We
be honest about it at least. Christ,
we need to hear the constructive criticism. We know that we're still figuring this thing out, and we know the sound quality can vary. So just bear with us. We're doing the best we can. We're stuck in our houses, so just interact with us and email us stories and ticket stubs and flyers and all that all that good stuff. northeastscene@gmail.com. Follow us on Instagram. We need more followers on Instagram and Twitter. It's the NE Scene on Instagram and Twitter. Post a story about us, make a post about us, tag people, recommend us, help us out. What do you have to say to that, Tommy?
Nothing. I actually was just going to say, my brain went to another place right now because I was thinking, when you said Instagram, I was thinking about a conversation I saw that you were having with a person on Instagram, and they asked you to ask me about a specific record, and I'm looking at the hard drive right now going like, I think I might have that. I'm like 99% positive I have it.
The heinous anus demo.
Yes, I'm pretty sure I have it.
Like, check for that. We can get it to that guy, and maybe
also,
we can.
That tape recorder. The cassette to MP3 is coming on Tuesday. So that is going to be, we will have that audio up of the Audience of One first demo tape ever.
Awesome.
Pretty soon.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. And someone is sending me something special. I don't want to say what it is yet because hearkening back to the conversation we just had with Chris, I don't want to say it until it's actually happening. But if it comes through, it's going to be very cool, and it's going to be something else we can share on our YouTube channel.
Oh, so that'd be great.
Yeah. So I'm waiting to hear for that. So folks, email us, tag us, interact with us, follow us at the NE Scene. This thing is awesome. Yeah. You're a part of it too. Let's push forward. Let's do this.
Hey, you're part of it.
Good track.
Thank you.
Track.
I was trying to look. I'm trying to fucking squeeze some shit in here. Let's go.
All right. Thanks everybody for listening, and until next time.